What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run 2 programs called Inner Knowing and Good Life Designed for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals on tools and frameworks for creating an intuitive practice and for creating self-mastery in their life. As someone who's helped countless entrepreneurs open doors of possibility that they never thought existed, I've seen these strategies transform people's lives. The best part is that you'll 10x your output, unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly to overcome your limiting beliefs. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition, and set a new framework on how to live your best life. And you'll get access to guided meditations that I have personally created that are not available anywhere else. We'll create a new self-concept that you can practice moving forward. This method is so effective that even if you don't have a lot of time or if you think you're not ready for a change, these frameworks and methodologies will still work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can also check out what some of the previous clients had to say about our time together. It's first come, first serve, and I hope to see you there. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Malyvahn Vankesan, and she studied with Tej and Harijiwan. Kundalini Yoga and Meditation was a lightning fast practice for her self-growth and healing, and she's been using breath work for a lot of quantum leaps in her own field. She has a goal to hold a healing space guided by the teachings of Kundalini Yoga, where each student can reach their highest bliss of prosperity. I have been a student in her class as well and really enjoyed the way that she's taught the principles of prosperity. So welcome to the show, Malyvahn.
Hi, how are you doing?
So to kick it off, Malyvahn, what exactly is prosperity to you?
You know what's so interesting? That's a good question because, I started teaching about a year and a half ago and at Ra Ma, and Ra Ma is a yoga studio in Los Angeles. And they had asked me to do prosperity hours. So going into prosperity, you think, oh, it's about abundance, money, energy. But then teaching it maybe 6 months in, I just really discovered that prosperity is all about the self-love first because as we work on ourselves and healing and we really define that innate feeling within ourselves first, the self-love is what we receive within ourselves, and that what comes out, and then that's when prosperity comes. So prosperity, I feel like it's a secondary of what it is that you receive from when you really truly know what self-love is, right? And as I teach in my class, I teach more of finding self-love, feeling yourself, loving yourself. And once you're able to receive that love within yourself first, that's when you attract the prosperity, the abundance, and the opportunities that helps you and guides you through all the opportunities and even the ways of navigating through life.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, Malyvahn. So you speak about self-love. I completely agree with you. I think prosperity is all about being able to receive as well as, attract abundance to one's life. And so talk to us about what does that mean, the self-love journey? What are ways that people who are listening in can maybe develop some new practices for their own self-love? Maybe it could be something even simple that you kind of share with people in your class and also in some of your one-on-ones.
So it goes down to more experience, right? My experience of the self. And when you ask or when you talk about self-love, that's the first thing. It can be so simple, but the most simple thing, you're very tedious, you're where do we start? And I always tell everyone, I go, start with yourself your authentic self first. And that's where you can see how you really are, right? And this last year has really helped me with that because I got to see how I really am, right? And to the point where, you know, you can be happy, you can be sad, you can be this, you can be that, in every emotion as far as, you know, your healing journey, because that's all going to come up. And resonating with that part first and allowing that to surface, that's being authentic and allowing that love to come in, because the self love starts with, all right, I want to start. As easy as a mindset, because you can do all this meditation, you can do all this breath work, you can go to all these yoga classes, but if you're just playing this facade of just going to go and not really coming back to you and say, I want to find self-love, it's never gonna make a big movement, because it starts with you first.
So, Malyvahn, you speak a lot about self love. Can you talk to us about some of the ways that you have put self love into your own daily practice or kind of lived experience of what does self love actually mean to you?
Self-love is all about being your authentic self to me. And that's what one of my assignments from Guru Jagat, when she gave me before she passed, we were in Oaxaca, and everyone was getting all these fun assignments. It was like a group of us. There's 19 of us there, and everyone's getting one to like dance in front of the mirror, doing hula hoop dances and all these fun activities. And then when she got to me, she's just said, you have to just be your authentic self. And going into that retreat, I set an intention of wanting to find what really self love is. And when she gave me that assignment, it literally took me about 3 to 6 months to really resonate with that. And it's more about having that mindset, having that affirmation, and also just really feeling that love within yourself first, as simple as telling yourself that you are loved, you are beautiful, because that's where it starts. Before you can take any meditation, before you can take any yoga class, before you can take any fitness class to look better, you have to talk sweetly to yourself first. And that's what I always say, just be graceful to yourself. And that's where self love starts.
Amen to that. And what are like some of the ways like you talk to yourself? Because I know a lot of people have like really, janky self talk and kind of talk to themselves like unkindly. What are some ways that you either course correct or some of the ways that you kind of tell yourself or remind yourself of your own magnificence?
It's so funny. I'm laughing as you're asking me because I do it in a way where it's fun, right? I just I seriously get into this mindset of you have to feel it right first. Like before you can say anything, it's like, because you can feel when someone tells you, wow, you're so beautiful, that you really mean it. And it goes back to you. You have to resonate it from the heart. And I seriously just kind of close my eyes, and I would love to put my hands at my heart center, or even like touching my face and just resonating with the skin to skin and vibrating that self love with, I am beautiful, I am love. You got this, Molly, man, you got this. Like it's really just encouraging yourself in that form of being real, not just saying it to say it, because it has to have meaning and it has to have feeling. And that's when it really works, because I do it all the time where I'm just like laying in bed, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to make this happen, let's do this, because you're speaking to your soul. It's like you have to regroup, because you're like, who do I speak to? So that's how I do it. Like it's really just resonating deeper within yourself and using that vibration of love.
Yeah, I love that so, so much. So I want to talk a little bit about your prosperity hour that you teach in the Kundalini Yoga Center. First of all, can you tell us like why did you choose this particular kind of mantra and kriya for prosperity to do on a weekly basis? And also perhaps you can talk to people about like what are some mantras and kriyas, and maybe you could define that because for folks who are listening in, they might not know what a mantra or a kriya is exactly.
Okay, so Kundalini Yoga, first off, is a vehicle, right? So it's a technology that is given to us from 2,000 years old, collected from Tibetan, Buddhism, Indian, and it's like really just put together as a collective. And it's more of like a way where you know how like you want to use your book to tell you okay okay, let me just give you a prime example. So you open a book to build something and you have to read these instructions, and that's what Kundalini is. Basically, you're doing a form of a technology that helps you take the vibration and the frequency upward. So it's all about the frequency, right? And that's just a technology to expand, the technology to create more energy within yourself. And I just felt like the prosperity hour fell into my lap because it was like, you know, when I was speaking to the person who was doing the scheduling, she was like, "Well, we have prosperity hour in this prana class, but I feel like I see prosperity in you because just the way you carry yourself." And that's the number one key to prosperity as well is the way you carry yourself and the way you vibrate. And it's a frequency that you can bring into a room. It's energy. And I love creating that within my class because, all we're doing in Kundalini Yoga is raising and adding more energy to the system. And it's a tool and a technology for you to do that. And the way of I would say Kundalini is an added value, right? Because people get scared of it. They're like, oh, you and I talk about this a couple times is, people like to wear turbans, people like to wear white, and they're doing this, they're doing that. But at the end of the day, you take that all away. If you're just going to go to class, is all about receiving the energy and the transmission from the teacher, from the students. Because when we collectively practice together, we're all evolving and we're all benefiting from the group aura, and the frequency just vibrates higher and higher every time we practice together.
Mm, I love that so much, Malyvahn. And yeah, you definitely are an embodiment of prosperity. There's like no lack consciousness in your field. And I think that's just like such a beautiful lesson I've learned from you, which is just to like really, really be very much a high end, person as you walk through life. The best of life is like really reserved for you. And that's sort of the way that you operate through the world and the way that you make choices. It's just ease and flow and just knowing that you deserve it and that you're worth it and that you're worthy of all the great things in this world. And that's been very clear in our time together when we've dropped in after some of these classes. So I so appreciate that. And, you're famous for doing one of the kriyas. Maybe you can mention what exactly is a kriya and what exactly is this Jupiter kriya and why is the planet Jupiter so important? I know that you spend a lot of time working with different astrologers as well. And so I'm curious, like, if you could tell us some of your thoughts on kind of like astrology, with prosperity.
Yeah, of course. So basically, every Thursday, I host this meditation called Jupiter Kriya. And a kriya is when you're holding a mudra and you're locking into the mudra to receive the energy, right? And I work with Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, a lot because Jupiter is wisdom, knowledge, prosperity, expansive, and it's luck. And that planet, if you tap into the frequency of Jupiter, that's what it's going to bring you. And you can do that with all the other planets as well. Like, for example, you know, your Mercury is to communicate, Mars is to take action, Sun is to gain more energy, and Saturn is to give you more power. And so I like to use all planets, but I've been resonating really, really, really so much with Jupiter because my moon is in Sagittarius, and that alone gives me the energy when I tap into my own mood, my own feeling. And being with an astrologist I've been working with, he told me, he's like, your Jupiter is in your midheaven. And I'm like, what is that? He goes, it's the top of your chart. And so I did more research on it, and the first time I ever taught this meditation, though, it gave me this, like, I was shaking so much. I didn't even know what it was, right? I was just like, why am I shaking? And so I went home, didn't think anything of it. And the next week later, I'm like, I'm going to teach it again. So I taught it and I kept teaching it and teaching it. And to the point where I was able to do it for 62 minutes. Because in class, I teach it for 31 minutes because of the time we have. But every Sunday I teach it. I lead it, actually, not teach. I lead it for 62 minutes. And the moment I did it for 62 minutes, the energy came right into my body. And it kind of gave me this huge download right away where it gives you this, I wish I could explain it to where you can feel it, where you get so expansive that any worries, any challenges, any obstacles that comes your way, you can't even see it. So the whole thing about Jupiter Kriya is, it's like a business plan. So there's different parts to this Kriya. So you're sitting spine straight and you have your Jupiter finger interlock with each other and you're looking at the tip of your nose and you're doing this breath, inhaling through the mouth and exhaling through the nose. So that's a sequence. And it's like a business plan for your soul. And when you put all those sequences together, you're able to clear your subconscious to see your prosperity, to expand. And then from there, you evoke this knowledge that comes naturally, where that's where the prosperity comes home is when, oh, I didn't know I can do this. Oh, I didn't know this is my talents. I didn't know I can create this, So, or the best part is you can see what your talents and your creative energy is, and then you start to attract the environment, attract people, attract things, attract technology and tools to help you guide through the journey of where you want to take this prosperity. And that's what Jupiter Kriya does. It's like using all the sequence. And also you asked about mantra. And we do play a mantra, which is Hud, 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 Gobende. It's one of the mantra, which is a sound current from Sanskrit that is used to clear the subconscious and also create a frequency of success within the aura. So as a human, we're made up with electric magnetic fields where our body is just an energy vessel. So that all we're doing in class is imagine you're a bank account, right? So your body's a bank and you're just feeding the body with pranayama, which is breath, into the body. So that creates a savings. And then by the time you're doing, I asked you to do breath of fire every single day, right? It gives you the prana to keep expanding, expanding, expanding to the point where if you're filling your cup with water, it's going to keep overflowing. And that's when you can give and that's when you can start to share. Because once you can feed yourself with the self-love, the prosperity, the prana, you can start to overflow it and give it back to the environment.
That's so, so powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Malyvahn. And yeah, it makes so much sense. I mean, I think people oftentimes treat their bodies like it's disconnected from the rest of the world and the rest of the kind of the relationships that we have, the energies on earth. And I think the way that you allow people to sort of bring in more energy through the practices of these kriyas and through different types of Kundalini yoga movements, I certainly feel a lot more energetic after class. And I think a lot of people do as well. And so it's been really fun to just be a part of this community with you and learn more about these kriyas. But for folks listening in for the first time, you could check these out online. You could also come to Malyvahn's class, which is also online. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your understanding your financial situation and how important that also is when it comes to understanding manifestation. Because I think a lot of us have a little bit of our blinders on when it comes to understanding our own financial health and financial world. So can you talk to us about that? Because I know you do a really good job about planning for the future and being really thoughtful about investments.
You know what's so interesting? before we start about the material, like financial vehicle, it really just stems down to energy, because money is frequency, right? So I always, I'm a financial strategist. So I work with my clients along with helping them structure their business and creating wealth within their business. But then also, we do Kundalini yoga sessions as well, because it takes a mindset, right, for them to expand. Because, for example, if I have a client who's making $10 million a year, and we give her projection for the next 6 months to a year to 5 years, and she sees a bigger number, she's going to get scared because it's something different for her. So what I like to do is I like to incorporate Kundalini yoga and the financial world together. So it's like connecting, like you say, it's connecting the resources from the frequency and expanding from there. And that's why I feel like Jupiter Kriya is really important for me, is because the more I expand, I can guide people in a mindset where, anything is possible. And that's what manifestation is. Anything is possible. And I always say like this about the lucky girl syndrome that I always live by is, I'm so lucky everything works out for me. And that's a mantra that I play in my head all the time, because it just gives you this frequency of pushing forward. You don't want to ask yourself why. You want to ask yourself, how can I do this? How can I be successful? How can I receive the frequency, or how can I expand? Because how opens up the heart center. And that's where I wanted to get into, is as well as the heart center is what the prosperity is open. And we don't live in the heart center. It's just going to create this fear, and it's going to shrink our aura and our frequency. So that's where, all the expansion can happen with just tapping into the heart center.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I love that so much. Malyvahn, you're like so speaking my language here. I also want to touch on like, how did you come to this philosophy? Can you talk to us about the journey that you went on, and especially an experience you mentioned growing up that really shifted your perspective? But yeah, tell us, like, how did you get here, and how did you form your opinion on this?
What's so funny? Like, okay, so it was just started when I was a little girl. Because I feel like when we're all kids, it's just like we're so pure, the environment hasn't affected us. And being from a refugee family, I was born in Thailand in a refugee camp. My family's from Laos, and I lived in a refugee camp for about 5 to 6 years before I came to America. So the moment we came to America, I was in like a third world country in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I got to see cars, I got to see toys, I got to see all these things in America. You got to see like fine food and all these like unique things that you don't see in a village. And I just kind of have this imagination, right? And I remember we were taking a bus one time because my mom said we had to go look for a school. And no, like, I didn't speak any English. My mom didn't speak any English. So like, we're just trying to figure out how to navigate. So I just seriously was just like, let me just figure this out. So I don't know how we did it, but just the way of how I directed the energy at that time, I just knew I had to get into my power. My soul was just really guiding the way for me. And I was sitting in the bus, and I was there out in the streets watching cars pass by. I'm like, what are those cars? And I just remember seeing them, and I can see the freedom, right? Because you're taking a bus where you're just going one direction, where the cars are going different directions. And it's just my mind at the age of 6 or 7, I'm thinking, I want freedom. And in order for me to have this freedom, I had to help my mom drive. And my mom did not speak a lick of English. And so I just started the funny part is I just started daydreaming, because I just started to notice that when I did go take naps and daydream, things would just start to come to me. And at that very moment, I'm like, oh, wow, if I could just keep dreaming, I'm going to keep receiving. And as a little girl, I was really just going to take naps to plan out how I wanted to envision my life. And I was playing with Barbies and I would map out, okay, I want a house. I want my family to own this because I want these toys in trade of what my parents can do. And in a matter of 6 months, my mom passed her driving test. My dad he got a pay raise and he was thinking about buying the store that he needed me to help him with. And I don't know, like I felt like overnight I just knew how to speak English.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. I love that. So you really went into your imagination and started to live in possibility. And I think that's such an important point because so many people lived in a kind of fixed worldview that this is the only thing that can happen. These are the linear steps that you need to take to get there. And I think what I so appreciate about your philosophy is that you really live in possibility and openness because we have no idea, how many, possibilities exist in the field. And I think we limit ourselves when we start to worry or we start to focus on, this is the best case scenario, right? And I think going into the imagination, Neville Goddard actually talks a lot about this, is really getting into your inner imagination and not being as focused on the external world, because the external world is just a representation of everything you thought about up until this point. Really, it's not about the future if you really don't want it to be about the future. So I love that so much. And I also, if you feel comfortable, I'd love to talk about your near-death experience and how that also maybe shifted your worldview.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm here to be honest, I just feel like experience, right? I said earlier, it's all about experience and sharing it because when you start to hear someone's experience, that's what inspires you. You're like, wow, if you can do it, I can do it too. Because, you can read a book about manifestation, you can read a book about self-love, but are you experiencing it? Or has someone experienced it and they're living it? And that's the number one key is really vibrating the frequency within yourself first. And it starts with wanting it and opening up your heart center. And so when I was about 20 years old, I just felt like I had a lot of pressure too as well growing up because my parents, they really relied on me. Which I didn't mind because I knew what my powers were so young, where I had to take on this responsibility because I asked for it. So I being at the age now, jumping to 13, 14, my dad finally invested in a supermarket. So it's a family's market that we still have now that I manifested. And it's been such an amazing journey to really help carry that on for my family through my aura, through the projection of not not um not fearing it. And it goes back to when my mom had to go to Australia because she got really sick and she ended up staying there. And I was about 20 years old. And it started with I was at dinner with my family friend. And growing up, I had a lot of kids make fun of me and, really put me down. And one of the things I feel like that kind of saved my life because this guy is sitting at the table. He saw a lump on my neck and he was just like, "Are you sure you're not a guy? Because you have an Adam's apple." And I'm like, "What?" And I just ran to the restroom and I saw this big lump the size of like a golf ball on my neck. It was like,
Wow.
really sticking out. I didn't never knew it was there until he mentioned it. So fast forward, I go to the doctors and they didn't find anything through the test results. So my doctor suggested that we just remove it through surgery. So I was just like, all right, you know what, let's just do it. And I was in surgery. And it was just interesting because the experience was like I was watching myself being worked on. And I was talking to them and I was just like, "Oh, you should do this." And I really was just marching up in and out of this hallway. It was really cold and it was the point where like I had to use the restroom. And this is in surgery. And I thought I was still alive, I felt this coldness. And I was calling to them. I'm like, I need to use the restroom. I need to use the restroom. And no one didn't hear me. And all of a sudden, like everything just blacked out. And I saw myself like flash with red. It was red, blue, white lights. And then all of a sudden, like it turned black. And then all I remember was waking up. And the moment I wake up, the nurse like starts hugging me. She's crying. And I'm like, what's happening? You know, like I'm just getting out of surgery. And she was like, you're just so young. Oh my gosh. Like, I can't believe this. And she just told me, she's like, you know, we found out you had cancer. So the surgery was longer. So we removed your whole thyroid. And I didn't think anything of it. You know, I went through my whole treatment of being in a hospital. And it just got to the point where, you know, months later, I had to go back to diagnose this cancer, right? And they said I had to do chemo, I had to do radiation, but I had to really sit down with that because the medication that they give me was, I felt like it was killing me. So I just told my doctor, I said, no, you know what? I'm really going to take this risk and not go through this whole toxic injection in my body. Because one of the warning signs was if I did radiation, I couldn't see my family for a whole month. And if they wanted to visit me, it would be through a glass. And I thought to myself, I'm like, wow, like if you can't even be around human beings while you're in this treatment, what is it doing to your body? And that comes back, you know, it stirs back to you. This is when you go back to self. You're like, if that's really happening, why would I even want to do this for my body? So I took this leap of faith and I said, no, I'm not doing it. And then fast forward, I met Tej and I was driving her and I had asked her, you know, about her surgery because she had knee surgery one time. And I said, Tej, how did you feel when you were in surgery? Like, did you, were you talking or were you awake? She was like, no, I was really asleep, deep asleep. And so I told her my experience and she like looks at me and she's like, wow, you died. And then we pause in the car and she says, you know, you're here to serve a bigger purpose. That's why the angels protected you. They didn't want you to leave. And then at that very moment, I just got this huge download within my heart that I'm here to serve a bigger purpose. And I didn't know what it was at the time, you know, until now when I started teaching. Like, all I want to do is just give and share and vibrate the love current and just be compassion and just forgive and just love no matter what, you know, and that's what people need. At the end of the day, it's not about meditating, it's not doing breath work, it's really just smiling at that stranger or asking them how they're doing because they want the energy exchange.
Mm. Wow, Malyvahn. I mean, so that story is so moving, and what an incredible, conclusion to really come away from that experience with a heart full of love and a desire to share that and teach people. And there's actually a lot of cases of near-death experiences that have a very similar kind of tone to it. Anita Morjani actually wrote the book Dying to Be Me, and she talks about that in the hospital as well. She crossed over and then actually saw herself being worked on by the medical staff. A really interesting book for folks also listening. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that's very vulnerable and just also gives me a lot more perspective on who you are as a person. Malyvahn, I want to talk a little bit about your morning practice because I know that is very important to you, and it's also been really wonderful for me to get a lot of tips from you on the morning practice. But like for folks listening in who may be very new to Kundalini Yoga or very new in general to having a morning practice, what is the advice that you'd give them?
Morning practice starts with what time can you give yourself, right? And that's another thing for self-love is how much time are you going to give yourself? That's the question, right? And, you know, a lot of people always ask me like, oh, can you give me a meditation? Can you give me a breathwork series? Or can you help me figure out what my practice can be? And the first thing I ask is, how much time do you have? You know, sometimes people say 3 minutes. Sometimes people say 30 minutes. And it just really goes back to how much time can you give yourself, right? And having a daily practice for me is very, very important because it's a time that I can give myself that nurturing. It's like way better than a massage or way better than going to get my nails done or my hair done. It's just really just singing to my soul, I call it, because when I do this breath work for 31 minutes, and the more I hear the sound of my breath, the more I can love myself, because your breath is the first sound that you hear. And it's really helped me to love my own voice. And when I do chant as well, I'm singing to my soul. That's why I say I'm like using the vibration, the sound current, the mantra to resonate more and tap into the heart center, right? Because a lot of people, when they sing, you can hear it from their heart and you can feel it. And that's what your whole goal is with this daily practice, is just going deeper and feeling yourself and loving yourself first. And that's where the the self-love starts from. It's just sitting in peace, even if you don't have a mantra or you don't know what mantra is, just sitting there and just breathing and listening to that sound of that breath, and then exhaling in, exhaling out. And once you can hear that, you can start to hear your heartbeat. You can start to feel your body pulsing. And that's what a perfect daily practice can start with, is just sitting in silent with yourself and facing out anything, right? Because when I do teach breath work, because I like to teach it within the time frame of 3 minutes, 11, 31, and 62 minutes, because it starts to break habits and it starts to create a sequence. And once you can do that, you can apply that to life. So if you can just sit and do a breath work for 11 minutes, you're breaking a pattern and you're mastering something that you've never done before.
Yes, absolutely. And for those who have not experienced Breath of Fire, it is dramatically shifting. It shifts you dramatically, really. Your sense of self, your energy, and also, it just sort of gives you an added boost for the day as well. I've been doing it in the morning, and it's been wonderful. So, Malyvahn, what about in terms of the pandemic? Have you noticed that people have been, moving towards like a kind of more prosperous thinking, less prosperous thinking since the pandemic? What have you noticed that has like really shifted over the last several years?
You know what's so interesting? I feel like a lot of people are going inward more, and that's the gift, right, of the pandemic. Yeah, it came with all these little things around it, right? But the gift was a lot of people went inward. And I've noticed that there's more businesses being created. People are working from home and people want to create something outside of working a 9 to 5 job, right? And it's just, I love that, because that's where prosperity hits, is doing what you love. And then everything else will attract. The money will attract after you love what you do. Because I can, even can talk about my business when I started about 15 years ago, where I got fired from my weight changing job, only job I had, and I was in college still. And I even asked myself, why am I even in college right now? Like, if I finish this, what's it going to give me? And at that time, I was just like, well, I just need to make a car payment. So let me figure out what I need to do. I was 21, 22 at the time. And I was just like, my mom always told me I can do things with my hand and just create from my hand. So I started making clothes. I started making hair accessories. I started just making the most random items out of nowhere. And then from there, I was able to tap into my creative energy. And then everything just started to fall into place. And that's where my business started. So fast forward to the pandemic, I'm seeing now that people are starting their own businesses and actually doing what they love, especially living in Los Angeles, because, you go to a Pilates class at 12 o'clock noon, you're like, does anyone work here? You're like, do people work here? But, at the end of the day, people are working on their creative energy, their creative project, which is like the best thing you can do, because the more you love it, the more you're going to enjoy life. And
Yeah.
my teacher, Harijiwan, always says, he says, you need to go out and have fun. Just start to expand, create, and have fun. And I always tell everyone this too, because if someone asks me, what advice can you give me? I said, do what you love, expand from that, create, and have fun doing it. And then from there, it gives you this mindset of, all right, yeah, I can do that. This is what I want. You got to want it first before you can take action.
Right.
So that's what I feel like, the pandemic has helped us, is really just kind of going and tapping into the inwardness of us and creating and being more creative.
I love that so much, Malyvahn. I feel like everything you say, I'm like, yes, definitely. Yeah, that creative energy, just like being in alignment with your life path is so important, because I think a lot of people can make money doing things that they don't really care about, but it feels like that comes with a cost, an emotional and a spiritual, debt almost, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it's an expansive energy for everyone around them. So I agree.
I mean, to be honest, like, I've worked with a lot of millionaires, even close to billionaires, and at the end of the day, they're not happy. Like, they can make all the money, but if you're not spiritually wealthy, it's not fun, and that's where true prosperity is, that spiritual wealth of, they say that, if they can drop anyone naked in an island and with nothing, what can you make yourself out of, right? And that's where the true prosperity is. If you can just be in an island with nothing and you create nothing, everything from nothing, that's prosperity.
Yes, amen, amen. So Malyvahn, why do you think that this subject is so important? And also, like, what has surprised you the most when you look back on your journey?
You know what's so important? I feel like it's just energy. So the whole practice, going back to daily practice, is just feeding the soul with more energy. And that's the number one thing, I feel like, before you can, move forward. Because even with me dealing with the whole cancer and the health issues, is just adding energy to your body. And that's the number one key, is just really, like I always say in class, like I mentioned before, this is, your body is the bank, and you're just giving it energy. And the more you can fill, the more you can prosperous.
Mm, yeah, I love that. And what has surprised you the most when you look back?
Um, what surprised me was just how fast this technology is, like, it's just like the miracles can happen at any given time. It can be, in an hour, it can be in the next day, it can be as fast as now. And even in class, like, I'm teaching, and all of a sudden, because I, go through situations with clients or with my own personal things, where I'm sitting there in class just praying and using the power of projection, and at that very moment I get an email solving the issue or a text message. And that's how fast miracles work. And that's what I look back is, wow, like, if I knew how quickly you can just shift a mindset, I can be doing it every single second of my day.
I love that. Okay, I'm gonna stop saying I love that, because it's just kind of,
Because we love it.
we like,
It's
yeah.
all about the
Yeah.
heart center.
I'm like, yes, yes, everything from the heart center. I feel like I would just want to live through that place always. Um, what would you tell our listeners as your main call to action? Like, what's your main takeaway?
My main takeaway is just breathe into it, because at any given time, any challenges can happen. You can't just really call into, I'm going to do this meditation for 31 minutes. The first thing you can just do is breathe into it. And then from there, you let the energy flow, and then it will just solve itself.
Are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you and learn more about your work and how to work with you?
Yeah, we can link them to the website, and then also on Instagram. I teach also every Tuesday and Thursday at Rama. We do live classes at 11. I think it's at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Times. Yeah. Man, it's always pre-recorded as well. And you can always reach out to me. I do one-on-one sessions as well. And I like to work with, clearing the body first before you can call in anything, because it's like I say, you can't do work in a dirty house unless it's clear.
Yes. Yes, definitely, definitely. Oh, well, thank you so much. And we'll also include those links in the show notes so that people can get connected to you. And what's your Instagram handle?
Malyvahn.
Malyvahn, just Malyvahn, one word. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
It's easy. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Malyvahn. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. I could talk to you for hours and hours, and very grateful for the work that you're doing in this world.
Yes, likewise. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about prosperity and Kundalini Yoga with Malyvahn Vankaisen. And you can tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again.